Hi. Have you ever learned anything? That must seem like a stupid question to you. But really, in the end, have you ever really even learned anything at all? Have you just adapted to the things that you didn't want to do in order to get the things that you did want to do and considered that a learned experience? I would argue that yes. I'm not trying to impart any knowledge to you whatsoever, other than a perception into my own rantings on the topic. I'm not exactly a learned person myself. I've obsessed over many things. I'd wager that you have as well. Learning is, I don't know, it's an icon. It's a symbol. It's a representation of achievement and glory and things of that nature. If I can get this to work correctly, that's right, here it goes. Now, when you learn, what do you really do? When you learn, you adapt. You adapt the fact that you didn't know shit. You adapt the fact that you were a dumb fuck, coming into something, not knowing what was going on, getting taken advantage of like a rube by all the savvy cool cats out there who know everything about the world. They're learned, aren't they? They know things, don't they? They've sort of adapted to the same circumstances in which you find yourself. They get to flex on you. They get to how do I say, show you that you're worthless. And that is part of the process by which people measure and compare themselves. The part of the process by which people impart some sense of hierarchy to things, to say, oh, like, you know, he obviously knows what's going on. Look at his success. Look at what he's done. Look at the things that he's done. He got what he wanted. She got what they wanted. You know what I mean? Everyone, in the end, gets something that they want. And can you say that that's something that you learned how to do? You can say that afterwards. You can tell people you learned something. But did you? Does it matter? Does it matter if you learned anything whatsoever in life? As long as you're getting what you want. This may be an extremely selfish thing to say. These may be things that seem adolescent. What's that other word for it? Puerile, sophomoric, obvious to the people who are lesser brained because they're not learned. They don't have what they want. But you take a moron and you give them success, any modicum of it, any form of success that you want to impart unto them, whether it's earned or not, you'd say that they learned something through the process. And just apply that all the way down the line. Sure, you have scholarly people, people who know how to write, people who know how to talk well, people who know how to give a presentation to a classroom full of people. But what does it mean? It's a hierarchy. Learning is a hierarchy, like anything else. It's a symbol that you attribute to things. Sure, you may know a lot of things, but what does that do to improve your situation? What does that do to improve your overall mood into your life? Are you a better person because you know things? Does it make you a better human being because you discovered that I can't do this thing that I thought I wanted to really do, because once I learned that I couldn't do that, well, I just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah, but did you want to do that? Are there things that you wanted to do that you learned you couldn't do? And then all of a sudden you have to tell yourself you're a different person because you've learned? You've adapted. It's a coping mechanism to everything. You've adapted. Adaptation is learning. Adaptation also comes after suffering. What do you do when you don't suffer? Do you tell people that you've learned? Oh, well, I was imparted this great life lesson because I went through such and such event. Does that even really matter? There's also the case of people who just make shit up. You can have guys who don't even really have much success in life, but into a room of crowded people, they can convince them that something else is going on. Might make them feel good in the moment, might make them feel good for a situation. You make someone laugh, you make someone feel something good. That's an achievement of sorts. You learn how to do that, but it's not learning so much as it is getting what you want. And if getting what you want included getting smart, well, you got what you wanted. You became a more intelligent person. But what does that even mean for you? Does that change who you are? Does it change who you are to know anything whatsoever? Fundamentally, you're still coping with the fact that you can or can't do the things that you really want to do in life. Messages imparted to you through symbolism and mass media. I will always come back to mass media for references to things like this because while it may be a sort of an obvious thing to talk about, The most obvious things are often the most unspoken because it's cringy to mention things that are super obvious. But then what happens? Generationally, intergenerationally, you get people who are not raised with the very, very basics in life because no one wanted to say them for fear of looking corny, for fear of looking like they don't know shit. Oh, this great revelation of, oh, maybe I shouldn't go into debt. Maybe I shouldn't fuck up my life on emotional journeys that result in the urgency of spending and the urgency of expending myself physically, mentally, for the sake of someone else, for the sake of approval, for a yada yada. Yeah, those are really super obvious things as you get older, but when you're younger, you don't even know what they mean. You can't even learn. When you're young, you can't even learn. You can't learn shit. You have to suffer. That is learning. Without the suffering, when you're young, you don't learn anything. You just learn how to get what you want anyways, and if you've already got what you want, your learning process ends right there. That's fine. That's totally fine. Some people adapt to that. Can have a little trust fund kid life, whatever that is. I don't even know how those guys live. But I would imagine that they really don't know shit by the time they hit 25, and that suddenly some sort of inevitable life moment hits them, and that's when they start to impart these great big dramaturgical flares to things, to say that, oh, when I discovered that on my sailing trip around Cape Horn that I couldn't, I don't know, I just couldn't eat that much caviar in one day. This is a fucking stupid example. That's not even funny. That's like old hat. But you know what I mean. I'm getting at imagery here. I'm not getting at specific examples. And to be quite honest, it kind of pisses me off when people ask for specific examples on things, because I'm thinking to myself, can't you extrapolate? Can't you just take the bare minimum of what I say, and this is pure projection, by the way, this isn't something that I expect anyone else to do, but maybe I do, because that's sort of the essence of projection, is you want someone to be able to take a piece of a sentence and extrapolate wildly into their own thoughts, and to go into 10,000 RPM spinning into the void up there to get some sort of inspiration going. It doesn't happen to everybody, granted. You'll have some people who are just incapable of having an inner monologue, or some people who, when they have it, they get miserable because they hear themselves talk and they don't like themselves. Granted, that's the case for most people, I would argue, but it's not exactly the most salient point right now. This is about learning. You can be shown things, you can be told things are good ideas, but there has to be self-interest involved for them to be worthwhile to learn. You're not really learning. I'll keep hammering this over and over again. You're not really learning. No one really ever learns. You just get better at stuff. You get an affinity for things. You get a flick of the wrist, a flair, a je ne sais quoi about your attitude and the way you carry yourself. Because ultimately it's perception-based. Learning is perception-based. Accreditation is perception-based. You don't get a diploma unless you know that there's rich people who are looking for guys with diplomas. It doesn't make sense otherwise, now does it? There has to be some sort of system behind it. Same thing goes with intelligence and learning. And while you may think there's a huge advantage to being a smart person, oftentimes it can be a crippling experience. You will be drawn to inaction, and then that inaction is alienating. And then once you're alienated, you have a whole new set of things to think about, and that kind of prevents you from getting back on board the train of the thing that you wanted to originally partake in for social validation and or reward. Again, the self-interest factor rearing its head. Sure, you may say, oh, I have no self-interest involved in these things. This is purely an intellectual pursuit. I'm a man above time. I'm a man above God, even. My mind is a steel trap. I will never partake in the lowliness of the emotional existence. I'll never partake in anything that has to do with base existence, libido, downward motion, left-hand path, whatever you want to call it. But you do. You always do. There's always some sort of interest involved. There's no learning for learning's sake. There's, even if you don't see it, even if you don't consciously perceive it, there's an end goal in mind. There's a reward. There's a social position. There's a ladder to climb. There's always a ladder to climb. No matter what position you're in society, even if you're stuck in your house, like literally stuck in your house, can't go outside, insane, fucked in the head, anxiety out the ass, you open your front door, you can't move. It's done. You're done in society. Well, there's still a ladder there to climb. You can't look at everything. Things sort of, they fractally reflect themselves downwards and upwards into the world, and, you know, meta-spirituality and whatnot. Very boring. I won't go into that. I don't care. What I care about is situations. What I care about is the well-being of the mind and the adaptation of the mind in the face of things that you can't necessarily predict. Learning. What is learning, really? It's a reaction. Do you have a smart reaction to something? Ooh, you learned something. You have a dumb reaction to something? You learned wrong. Someone taught you wrong. We're always taught things. But where does it come from? All these things, they come from inside. The motivation to be smart, the motivation to be a better person, that's you. That's not other people, necessarily. You do it for other people, but it's for you. It's not exactly an egotistical thing. It's instinct. It gets beat out of your head. The fact that you're not an instinctual person. Oh, you have to measure. Measure reactions. Get better. Get smarter. Get wise. Wise just means don't get in my way. That's really what that means. Society at large, the sales pitches of mass media, and the, how do I call it? The term gaslighting is sort of overused, but it's very effective, gaslighting. And it applies to everyone and everything. They've all got a lie. Everyone's got some sort of lie. Whether it's the lie of, ooh, I really want to go to work today, or, ooh, I really want to come home to this person, ooh, I really want to go and do that with these people. That sounds great. Well, you're doing that for a reason, too. You've learned to do that, in the operative sense of the word. Because to learn is to operate things. To learn is to be like ambidextrous with your thoughts, with your mind. Where does it lead? Well, it can lead to confusion. You can be trapped. You can be trapped in what is essentially a. I wouldn't say it's a prison, because it's not a prison. You're in a mental prison thing. That doesn't work. It's not a good allegory. People don't put themselves in mental prisons. They put themselves in, like, corridors. You are trapped because you have some sort of emotional goal in mind, and you only have so many avenues through which to explore it. You don't really care what those avenues are. You will pretend to care. Everyone pretends to care to some extent about the things that they're doing to get what they want, because that's part of the show. Someone else before you has told you, or shown to you, or given you some sort of hint that you should be monstrously involved in something. You gotta have the fire, you gotta have the passion, you gotta have the, something to get you through it. But it's like, it's performative. You perform that way for people who are underneath you, and people above you perform that way for you, because it's a motivator in and of itself to tell you that there's a motivating factor, when in fact it's just performance. Of course, again, pure projection. It has nothing to do with the real world. But maybe it kind of does. Everyone's kind of pieced together from the same cloth in some ways. We're all one child under God in the end, split up into a tiny million, billion, trillion little pieces, like mist. If you consider the world, you're a little mist particulate, a little piece of a cloud, and God is the ocean. It's not so much that you're separate from God, because you wouldn't be here without it, I mean, in that spiritual sense. But when you go back down, you're just rejoining the sea. It's nothing fantastic. There's nothing fantastic about any of this. You have to demystify. And I think it's an interesting thing to demystify things, because it kind of puts them in their truer light. You have to demystify everything in order to actually adapt. When you are in a state of awe, when you're in a state of wonder, it's a drug. It's the heroine of existence. It's the thing that you forge memories out of. The thing that you go back to a certain period in your mind and, oh, wasn't it fucking great? Wasn't that fucking great? And what did you learn? You learned that you want that. You learned what you want. You learn what you don't want. In the end, it's very stupid. Your instincts and everything are always dumb. But does that make them less valid because they're dumb? Not really. It's true. If it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. If it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. So put yourself in that mindset in some way. And that's not really a learned mindset. That's just sort of a positivist version of giving up on life, if you want to call it anything like that. But you'll never really learn. You'll only get better at stuff. And once you get better at stuff, there's a performance involved in telling people that that was because of a learning process, or that was because of a thing. It's like you just learned to not feel so bad about things, or you've learned to not let your emotions of positivity override your sense of logic and get taken advantage of, because there's a lot of really opportunistic and shitty people out there in the world who have no sense of empathy or guidance. You know. I could say these things in a more positive light, obviously. And I feel like I am, honestly. Like, I honestly feel like I approach these things from a positive angle. It's not that I'm an intrinsically positive person. It's just that my outlook is that it doesn't matter, so why beat yourself up? But it doesn't matter can operate on many levels. To tell yourself that it doesn't matter to get something that's super important in the moment, super important for your life. It's like you have to, I don't know, you have to kind of die. You have to kind of die inside. Something, a part of you, a piece of whatever innocence and candor is left over from your childhood, from that sense of yourself where you kind of know what you want, but knowing what you want is that translation of a social signal. And this is where mass media operates, obviously. It tells you to get cues for the things that you want based on social approval. It shifts you around, and it can be confusing growing up because while you may not fall for those tricks, you have fallen for them in the past, and they have forged a pathway in your brain, and there are still ramifications for those. You're still stuck under the same paradigm. Politics, society, religion. You all go to the supermarket. Idiot. You all go to the supermarket. You all have to drive on the same road. We're not Amish. You haven't really figured it out now, have you? Nope. We're not living in the future yet. Still living in the dumb old present. It's still the same as it was before. And for God's sakes, you can be a 90s kid, you can be a kid who was born in the middle of the 80s to a kid who was born even fucking 10 years ago. They're still subject to the same garbage. We haven't changed. We haven't learned. There's no such thing as learning inside this confusion. That might be a political statement. You think that's a political statement? I don't think so. I just think that, like, confusion is inevitable when the society grows to a certain size. Because you have so many people who want things that are diametrically opposed. What's the natural conclusion of that? Death, slaughter, warfare, mass extinction type events. I mean, mass extinction, we're talking about millions of people. We're not talking about billions. But still, you know, it stings. You don't want that. You don't want a world like that, do you? So that keeps you in line. You don't want to die. You don't want to die a horrible, painful death. Do you? You don't want to live in some sort of hellscape that is obviously the logical conclusion of abandoning the world that we currently know. Oh, it's just going to be hell. Well, you can't really know because none of us have learned anything about what this world really even is to begin with. I don't think anyone has. I think it's just systems. I think it's just machines that someone turns on. Allegorically speaking, of course. I'm not dumb enough to say that there's machines that you turn on and they print money. I mean, there are, but it doesn't work like that. It's more like there are automatic systems, and these automatic systems can include you as a person, as a walking wallet, going around making stupid decisions based on things that people have told you. Now, that's not inherently a bad thing. You kind of need an element of that in order to forge a bigger, cohesive society. There's always going to be dum-dums out there. Can't change that. But when will you learn, goddammit? When will you learn? Let's see, what do I want to do with this? Now this, very simple. I could just turn this into a head. And that's hack. Alright, don't get me wrong. That is hack. Talking about the word learn, you draw a head. Ooh, it's in his head. He learned something. You know, though, the most self-critical people are always... The most self-critical people can't stop. It's not like you can tell yourself to just stop being so self-critical and it actually works out that way, because it doesn't. Self-criticism is also something that's learned. You tell yourself something because in a superstitious way, and I don't believe that human beings are hardwired to operate any other way than superstition when you really boil it down. In a superstitious way, it's like it's a rain dance for favor. It's a ritual, but it's a ritual of one. It's performative because you think you're doing it to other people, but really you're persuading yourself that doing so accrues the good favor of others. It doesn't matter. I haven't learned anything. That's what I'll argue. That's the real thing. It's like, how strong is anyone's opinion when you can come up to them and say, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm a fucking idiot. And you're not tempted to try and race against them. You're not tempted to try and put yourself in some sort of competitive edge situation with them. You can remove yourself from that equation entirely. You will be ignored. You will be ignored. You will be shunned. You will be berated and called some sort of pejorative term, flavor du jour of bad person for not participating in things. And usually it involves just trying to clear the field for the next sale as far as their interpersonal thing goes. You don't have to be involved in that. It's none of your beeswax. It's none of your beeswax. Oh, Christ. This is still ugly, isn't it? Look at that. Where's it going? Should I just take one side? One side's dark? That's what it's going to be. One side's dark on this face. There's sort of a line. Now, I'm not big on anatomy, you see. I'm not big on anatomy. I'm not big on life drawing and things of that nature. I'm more big on conveying symbols. And as long as whatever you convey is symbolically identified, as long as whatever you convey bears some sort of language to it, I feel like that's, it's not that it's a bit more profound, but it's a bit more accessible. You never really want to make something that's completely inaccessible. That's also a vanity project. It's a demonstration of a learned state of being to make something cryptic. Ooh, I must uncover the puzzle. I must discover what this person meant by this thing that they're doing. It's like there's always layers to that. You don't have to tell yourself that you're not a smart person because you couldn't decipher something that was put together by someone intentionally making it hard to figure out. It's really just like, it's so juvenile. It's so juvenile to be a learned person. I'd rather be dumb. I tell myself that almost every day. I wouldn't say every day because some days I have good days. I don't tell myself that. But on a bad day, on the bad brain days, can't shut it off. Can't shut it off. Won't shut it off. It's impossible. It's akin to shutting down a nuclear power plant where you do it wrong and then the whole thing just fucks. Just fucks you. But on a good day, I don't mind. I don't mind not being dumb. But on a bad day, just being dumb would be so much easier for my soul. I don't want to see anything bad in the world. I don't want to know that it's out there. I don't want to have to cope with the fact that there's, like, these weird hollow lemming people running around who just have... It's not that they don't have anything in common with me. It's just that they've learned the wrong things. That's the typical boomer thing to say. You learned it wrong. You don't know what you're doing. On top of the skull. All right. Now here's a real question. This is also something that kind of applies to art in general. The way that you shape a face and you put eyes on it, it kind of just, it redefines everything. You put shark eyes on a lifelike drawing, something to it. You put cartoony eyes, sort of disproportionate eyes on something, it changes it completely. The position that you put, like, just put the eyes a little bit too close together. It's an entire language, the placement of the eyes on the face. And when it comes to something that's more abstract, granted this isn't, a perfect face, I could put the eyes here, in this little spot right there. But that gives them too much emotion. It gives it too much of this thing that it's trying to push forward. And I'm trying to give it a mutant quality. I'm trying to give it this, like, battered, beat to hell kind of thing about it. And I think a good way to expedite this for placement is I got to identify the middle of the face, which is going to be right here. And I just put the divide line for the teeth. Just a little one, because it's dumb. It's dumb. You see teeth, you see a face. You see eyes, you see a face. And front teeth are easy. It's a McDonald's arch. Draw a McDonald's arch, center your face, and then just sort of, I give them a little bit of a twist. I don't make them perfectly flat. I don't make them perfectly round. Gives it like a identification. Something's not perfect. It's not perfect, therefore it's more relatable. It's more relatable, therefore it talks. It talks, therefore I look at it. And I just use my own barometer for that. I'm not exactly asking for feedback in the end. You go and talk to people and they'll say, it's good. It's crap. No, it's really good, I swear. It's really good. You should keep drawing. You should keep going. I don't care. And you shouldn't either, realistically. It's like, and I hate to quote Banksy, because Banksy's like the favorite guy of all these, like, assholes and mustaches. But good art is like taking a shit. You don't eat so you can take a good shit. It just comes out of you. I'm really looking forward to shitting this meal out. Shouldn't be what's on your mind. It's like making art to get... Okay, this is the real quote. Making art to get famous is like eating well to take a good shit. It's like... I don't know. It lines up like that. It's a natural process. If you got it in your head, you got it in your head. If you don't, you don't. There's no way to explain it. There's no way to convert someone into an artist. That doesn't exist. There's no way to convert someone who has like a... I don't know... And this is one of the major trappings of the art world. You can't convert a lazy person into a powerhouse. You can't do it. You can't convert yourself. If you are an intrinsically lazy person, you can't become a real, like, dynamo. Because it's unsustainable. Not because you can't learn, but just because, in the end, you're working hard so you can be lazy. You're not working hard so you can keep working hard, are you? I mean, there's an obsession behind that. That's sort of the behavior that's sought after by people who want to breed you for social engineering purposes, and believe me, there are. They might not have the most exciting lives or names or faces. It's not exactly a grand conspiratorial thing, but they hate you, and they want you to be a fucking drone, lemming bitch. And you will be one by their standards because you can't keep up with how well they project they've learned. So just drop out. Drop out of the game. It's rigged. Live for yourself in some ways. And living for yourself might include other people. You learn that, ironically. Ironically, you learn that your life isn't just for yourself. But you have to get there through being exposed to the things that you fear. You have to get there through being exposed to the pain. I don't have opinions. I have reactions. I'm a reactive man. Now, where's this going? See that? Eye. Immediately changes the face. What is it? What is it? I'm going to get rid of this angle here. I'm going to join this up, because that kind of makes the cheekbone shape. Join the E. The E kind of goes right there. an amalgamation. Suppose if you wanted to be extremely pedantic, and I mean extremely, because we're all capable of it in some extent. I know I am. You would say, I'm not learning. I'm amalgamating. I'm not learning. I'm compiling. I'm individuating. I'm seeking. I'm struggling. You could say all these in the context of art. You could say these in the context of anything creative. You could say literally anything and tie it to a process that conjures emotions. And all of a sudden it has validity for others because it triggers their extrapolative senses and their ability to portray 25 minutes of bullshit on a one single word. In my instance, learn. What does that make me think of? And then all this happens. I can't do anything about that. That's why these videos are here. But you have to know how you trigger other people into revealing their true colors, their motivations. And sometimes it's not even obvious to them. People will just say stuff, and it has a certain angle to it. People just want things that has a certain angle to it. Again, the most obvious things to ever say. The most obvious things. And people make fun of you for saying the obvious things. They always will. They're never going to congratulate you for saying something that's obvious. Meanwhile, what that actually is a transmission of culture. It's ironic. Colloquialisms, dad jokes, funny moments, America's Funniest Home Videos. It's culture. That's why it's corny. It's corny because it's not new. And something better isn't always around the corner. And that doesn't really matter either, as you will learn. I'm not even an authority. I'm not even an authority. So here's the thing. I chose to make the eye looking up. There's a little wink. A little winky poo. Because, I don't know, rising sensation. The rise, the ascent, the sense of transformation, man above nature, that kind of thing. And believe me, these are all things that I've bullshitted in front of art juries before, so it's not foreign to me. It's just about the way that it's sold. With confidence, smart. Without confidence, with hesitation on things, it's not learned. It's not learned. How could I trust this person? He doesn't even bullshit well. That's, in the end, the most cynical version, and I do mean like the most cynical thing that you can possibly learn, is it's all about the delivery. It's not necessarily about the message. It's not necessarily about the content of the message. It's everything is delivery, including the fact that you've learned anything whatsoever in life. Because to most people it doesn't matter. But that's a positive message. So I'll leave you on that.